So I'm going to get started. So first of all, thank you everyone for coming today. We appreciate you being here. I'm Ken Cerini, I'm managing partner of Cerini Associates. So welcome to our annual nonprofit conference. We've been doing this now for probably about 15 or 20 years. And really the goal of the nonprofit conference is to provide insight into some of the changes that are happening within the nonprofit sector. We're going to be talking today a little bit about some accounting changes, legal changes, as well as some of the key issues that are facing the sector. We do this because we believe that we believe in the nonprofit sector, I should say, and we're looking to help the sector grow, get stronger, and be more impactful. So the more we feel that we can provide information to the nonprofit sector, the better off we're going to be. Let's face it, I mean, these are tough times. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of different issues, reduced resources, increased demand for services, leadership stretched very thin. And we'll talk about a lot of these things today during the course of the conference. But again, it's hard to know where to turn for answers. It's hard to know where to go and get information. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do. We're hoping to kind of bridge that gap and provide the nonprofit sector with a whole lot of information. One of the resources that's out there that I'm not sure everybody's aware of, there's something called the Nonprofit Resource Hub. We are one of the founding members of the Nonprofit Resource Hub. What the Nonprofit Resource Hub is a group of professionals that work very closely with the nonprofit organizations. They've been completely vetted. And what these professionals are doing is they're providing a lot of information, one place, one stop for nonprofit organizations to get some really good information as to what's happening in the sector. Kelly just posted the website for the Nonprofit Resource Hub. It's nonprofitresourcehub.org. It's free to join for nonprofit organizations. There's a lot of good information on the website. There's seminars, webinars, conferences and stuff that happen on a regular basis. So I do encourage anybody who doesn't know about or is not a member already of the Nonprofit Resource Hub to kind of jump in and become a member. It doesn't cost anything, and there's a lot of good benefits for it. From Cerini Associates perspective, we continue to push out information, but honestly, we want to hear from you. We want to make sure that we're getting the right information out. So we do ask if you can provide us with information over the over the course of today, over the course of the year. Any feedback you can provide us on what we can be doing better, what information you want to see. Do you need or want board training? What is it that you want that we can provide? We're more than happy to do it, either through Cerini or through the Nonprofit Resource Hub or any other avenue we have in order to get information out to you, the nonprofit sector. So what I want to kind of spend my roughly 40 minutes talking about today is in January, we released our 2022 Nonprofit Trends Report, which outlined the trends we were seeing in the nonprofit sector. And here we are now about halfway through 2022. And I'd like to kind of provide some level of update because obviously we didn't have a crystal ball. Things didn't work out as perfectly as we had assumed they would. So again, I do want to kind of get a little bit into that. So COVID is still a thing, I think, kind of. I know COVID is still impacting everyone. You're in a situation where we're constantly in a place where people are experiencing disruptions because of COVID. So, COVID is still out there. People aren't taking it as seriously as they once did with the vaccination and the fact that a lot of people who are getting COVID aren't really getting hit with significant issues with respect to COVID. But again, COVID is still out there. I think it's still being extremely disruptive in terms of what's happening out there. Hold on, let me just. All right, so like I said, COVID is still an issue out there. Obviously, the economy is not doing well. Inflation is on the rise. We are sitting in a situation where I don't know, are we going to go into a recession? Do we ultimately are going to fall into hopefully not a depression, but we're kind of there on the borderline of a recession right now. The stock market is down, interest rates are up. We're officially in a bear market, the 7th bear market in the last 50 years, but we're officially there. Where is the workforce gone? Both paid and volunteer. Unemployment is up, but nobody can seem to be able to hire people. And I think some of that has to do with being able to pay a living wage. Mental health issues are on the rise. I think it's because it's more acceptable in today's environment for people to discuss mental health. It's not as taboo as it once was. And you have a lot of stressors that are happening with respect to COVID and the isolation and a whole bunch of other issues. So we'll talk about that a little bit. There seems to continue to be a high level of polarization that's taking place. It seems like every single issue is black and white. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of shades of gray anymore. We're dealing with things like racial justice, climate change, law enforcement, immigration, vaccination, politics, international relations, you name it. It just seems like there is such polarization and such diversity in terms of thought process, which kind of adds to a lot of the issues. One thing I do want to say from a nonprofit perspective, remember you have donors who may be all over the place with respect to some of these issues. You just have to be very, very careful not to get sucked into some of these issues. Stay on point with your mission, stay on point with your impact, because you can alienate donors pretty quickly with all the polarization that's taking place. So let's start with the economy, and let's talk a little bit about what's happening out there in the economy. So inflation is at an almost 40-year high. Consumer price index is up 8.6% in May of 2022 as compared to 2021. That's a tremendously large increase, and that can create a lot of shortfalls, especially in some of the marginal families that you guys are serving. Thus far in 2022, there's 7.9% inflation nationwide. New York City is not as bad. New York City's only been about 5.1%, but still we're dealing with heavy duty inflation. And if you're going to be out there giving raises to your staff, in order for your staff to keep up with inflation, the raises have to be in that 5 to 8% range. And I'm not sure that a lot of organizations can kind of meet that type of inflationary or salary increases. Salaries, as I have here, salaries expected to rise between 5 and 7%. Obviously, there needs to be an uptick in salaries. Employees are just not necessarily staying with the same companies that they have in the past. Loyalty is down, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move on. So again, keep in mind that salary, while it isn't the #1 factor, is still an important factor. We are looking at high unemployment at 7.6%, but I don't know where the workforce is. So you're in a situation where you've got high unemployment, but everybody seems to be hurting and trying to find staff. Employees are looking for more remote hybrid opportunities. They want the flexibility. Employees, want to have that flexibility. People are looking more for that better work-life balance than they have in the past. We've got some, different, Gen Z and Gen Y, and it's just a different mindset in terms of what they're looking for out of the employment workforce. So again, I think you need to kind of understand and tailor your employment opportunities. You have rising cost of transportation. Gasoline is at a crazy price tag. You've got daycare, which is up because as salaries increase, so does everything else that relies upon labor. So you've got these rising costs, and if I'm in a situation where I'm making a limited salary and a large chunk of that is going to be able to get to work and to pay for someone to take care of my child, why would I want to work? So unless we can get those wages up and get those wages to a point where they're more livable wages, and that's going to take some level of advocacy on all of our parts in order to, get the government, where most organizations still rely heavily upon government funding, to get the government to bring salary levels or bring funding levels up to a point where we can pay better salaries to our staff. The other thing we're seeing is an increase in the gig economy where, people are doing a lot more freelance or one-off type jobs. You got things like Fiverr and Amazon Flex and companies like that. And that might be an opportunity if you have, specific jobs or specific functions that need to take place, rather than bring in someone who you need to bring in as an employee. You might be able to bring in someone for a particular project through some of these applications. We're also seeing an increase in interest rates. The prime rate is up 1.25% since the beginning of the year. In early June, the Feds gave a 0.75% increase. And there's expectations that in order to continue to manage the inflation that's out there, we expect to see additional increases in interest rates. And there's expectation of another 4, 5, 6 increases before the year is out. So think about what that means. As we increase interest rates, that means mortgage rates are going up. So anybody who's on a variable mortgage, anybody who has a home equity loan, we're going to see increase in interest rates and the amount of money going out, because home mortgages, they were at their low in the high 2s, low 3s, and now they're hovering in the 5s. That's a big increase. So it's going to make it harder for people to buy homes. It's going to make it harder for people to afford to stay in homes if they're not already sitting with low interest rate mortgages. You're going to see for businesses increases in lines of credit, which is going to eat up more resources. Anybody who wants to invest in capital expansion, you're going to see some declines in that because you're looking at interest rates popping. And then you got supply chain shortages. You're looking at impact of supply chain shortages where it's harder and harder to get supplies, which means that if you're going to need certain supplies, you need to start ordering those supplies a lot earlier. Technology, equipment, computer equipment, it's been very, very difficult to get that equipment. Building materials have gone way up in value and hard to get those. So it's really going to drive the cost of everything up. So if we look at, what's happening with the economy, and you see that there's a downturn in the economy, that downturn in the economy is going to affect you as you do business. It's going to affect the cost that you guys are paying for things. It's also going to have an impact on your donors because everybody's going through this. And we'll talk a little bit more about the impact it's going to have on the donors when we talk a little bit about what's happening with the stock market and what's happening with availability of resources. So I guess the question is, are we heading for a recession? Are we heading for a depression? I mean, we're not there yet, but we are looking at, and experts are predicting that by 2023, they're expecting there to be very little, if any, growth in the economy in 2023, and whether that trails off into 2024. So if we get some stagnation for a little period of time, we could drop into some level of recession. From an investment perspective, the S&P is down 22%, which officially makes this a bear market. The bear market is anytime the S&P drops 20%, that puts you in a bear market. So that's where we are. The NASDAQ is down 32% so far this year. Anybody who invested in cryptocurrency got hit hard. Terra Luna, which was one of the top 10 cryptocurrencies out there, lost almost 100% of its value, which took about 500 billion off the table in terms of investments. Bitcoin has dropped 75% of its value. So again, you're in a spot where you've got these economic downturns, and from a donation perspective, when you're looking at potential donors who have lost 25, 30, 50, 75% of their assets or portions of their assets, you could see some slowdown and some expected slowdown in fundraising over the next year. And you also have to be very careful if you have pledges on on your balance sheet, whether those pledges are going to be collectible moving forward. And you may need to open up some lines of communication with your donors to find out if what's happening with those pledges and whether those pledges are going to be collected. We're going to talk a little bit more about fundraising and fundraising strategies as we kind of move through my presentation this morning. But again, I think this really, it's going to be really more important to communication is going to be key. Keeping those lines of communication with your donors, trying to create different experiences and trying to create different opportunities with your donors. We have seen already this year, individual donations we're still strong in 2021, as were private foundation donations. Excuse me, but corporate donations were down in 2021. So we have seen a downturn in corporate donations. And from a individual donor perspective, remember, donors tend to put money where it's needed the most. And you've got things like, the war in Ukraine, Russia and Ukraine going on. So there's been some money moving there. If we have any, big climate or, issues that take place, money tends to follow where it's needed the most, which sometimes takes money away from local charities, like the ones you guys represent. Housing starts are dropped about 14% in May. Approximately 7 out of 10 Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And what that means is that's, all it needs is one small little downturn, and a lot of these individuals who, are holding on by their fingernails could wind up increasing the demand for services that the nonprofit sector provides. Do not expect, we've been buoyed over the last couple of years with CARES Act and federal funding. Don't expect that federal funding to continue. The federal government threw out a whole lot of money over the last couple of years, thinking that, if we can get through the COVID pandemic, we'll be fine. Here we are. I'm not sure we're through the COVID pandemic, but it's not as big an issue as it was. And, on the other side of the COVID pandemic, wasn't a light. There was, a downturn in the economy. So I'm not sure that there's going to be a lot of federal funds that are going to, be put out there to help and to drive the nonprofit sector. New York State, in terms of their budget, the federal funding that came in is going to help them ride through 2023. But at the end of 2023, what happens? New York State relies heavily upon Wall Street. And as Wall Street does well, New York State does well because they get a lot of money in from taxation and stuff of the Wall Street brokers and things like that. So as Wall Street takes a downturn, that's going to have a significant impact on the money coming into the New York State budget, which could impact nonprofit organizations going into 2024. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom here, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that the economy is not in a good place. And that we just have to be mindful because we could be looking at deep economic slowdowns that could affect your funding. There could be decreases in some of the rates that you're getting paid because the budgets aren't there at the state and federal levels. You could be seeing, even if the rates don't go down, with the uptick in inflation and the rise in cost of labor, you might be in a situation where even the rates you're getting paid are just not sufficient enough to cover. And again, the drops in potential fundraising that may take place. So what do organizations need to do? We've been encouraging our clients to create flexible budgets. If you're in a situation, you're creating a budget, you want to create not just a static budget that says, here's what our budget looks like, but what happens if we experience a 5% drop? What happens if we experience a 10% drop? What changes are we going to make? Because if you create a static budget and then you see, 2 months into the year, you've got a 5% drop or a 10% drop, and then you try to react to that, and it takes you, a month or two to analyze everything and figure out what you want to do. Now you're, 4 months into the year, and you got to figure out, you already lost a third of the impact. What everybody should be doing is they should be creating budgets that don't just look at things on what the expectation is, but what happens if we're 5% or 10% or 15% off, and what is our reaction going to be? What cuts are we going to make if that were to happen, so that you can kind of function effectively, quickly, and you've got the board's blessing on it before it even happens. I think the last 2 years, and I've talked about this in the past, but I think the last 2 years, organizations have had to be very reactive. We've had a lot of changes and regulatory changes happening because of the pandemic. And I think organizations need to really start looking at things more strategically, really start doing a lot more planning on a go-forward basis. I think that's going to be extremely important for nonprofit organizations. One of the things I didn't mention with respect to the CARES Act funding, and as I said, that is drying up. But if anybody has not looked into the employment retention tax credits, and they haven't gone after the employee retention tax credits, and they've experienced a downturn in their revenue of 20% or more, it might be something they want to look at, because those are still available to organizations. Hybrid functionality is here to stay. Hybrid staffing, more flexible staffing, people working both remote and in person. I think your fundraising events are going to need to be hybrid on a go-forward basis. Again, we're still dealing with, a population that is not coming out in droves for events. We're seeing people coming out more than they have in the past, but you're still in situations where people are a little hesitant, being around a lot of other people. And I think that's going to continue for a while. You got to find ways to increase your volunteer efforts. Nonprofit organizations have the ability to leverage volunteers. And unfortunately, over the last couple of years with COVID, nonprofits haven't been able to utilize their volunteers as effectively as they have in the past. This is an opportunity now for you to kind of get back out there and reconnect with your volunteers, build that volunteer base. People want to help nonprofit organizations, and if they can't do it, fiscally through being able to provide funding, they can do it through their time. So find ways to keep your volunteers or get your volunteers engaged, to build your volunteer network and base. One of the things you can do is, and we'll talk more about social media this morning, but you do have a lot of Gen Z who are very, very good with social media. They live in social media on a regular basis, on a daily basis. They spend hours. If you can get, some of the organizations out there, some of the individuals out there to volunteer some of their time and help you manage some of that social media, that might be, very good for you. Consider partnering with other organizations, look for joint services. So we're going to talk about some of that importance with respect to the funding going forward. We're seeing a little bit more of community-based funding, where it's not necessarily donations to a particular organization, but it's funding of a particular community where organizations are going to need to come together to provide joint services and to be able to meet the needs of a specific community. So, that's something that's going to be very, very important. Someone asked, I had mentioned the ERTC before, someone asked about the ERTC and said that all applications after December 31st, 2021 will not be accepted. No, the ERTC is a change to your payroll tax forms. So it's a modification to your 941 form. You have to do a 941X. You actually have 3 years from the date the form was due to file for the ERTC. So I think what the IRS is saying, or what that website might be saying, is that the ERTC was only valid for the first 3 quarters of 2021. So it's 2020 or the first 3 quarters or the first 3 quarters of 2021. It's not available past the first 3 quarters of 2021, but you have 3 years to apply for it. Moving on, increase fundraising efforts now. If the economy is going to get worse, the more you can do now, the more you can try to build discretionary funds now, the better off you're going to be. And I know everybody has made deep cuts already, but you need to continue to relook at your spending and figure out where possible cuts can be. One of the ways you can do that is maybe look at technology and find out ways that maybe you can use technology more effectively to cut down on the amount of labor that's needed. So I know everybody is very interested in fundraising. So let's talk a little bit about fundraising. So I think we're looking at right now is you got to find ways to make giving more flexible. People aren't giving in traditional ways. There's been a 20% decline in donations via check. People aren't writing out checks. People are trying to do things more electronically, more online. So you have to bump up the number of options you have for people to donate. QR codes. It was funny when I was away last week. There was a guy playing guitar on the street, and if you wanted to tip him, you could actually go, and he had a QR code set up where you could actually scan the QR code and give him a tip through your phone. So there's a lot more of this that's happening. So have opportunities like QR codes, ACH allowing larger donors to transfer funds, digital wallets, things like Google Pay, Apple Pay, PayPal, Venmo, even the ability to accept cryptocurrency. Again, I think some of that stuff is down at this point, but cryptocurrency is definitely still something that's out there. Personalize the giving experience. You need to make the donor feel important. I think you're in a situation today where everybody is short-staffed. Everybody's just trying to, get through things. And I think you need to have maybe even for all donors, but definitely for your larger donors, maybe a little more concierge type feel to all of this stuff. So I think that's important. Find out why. Ask questions. Find out why organizations connected with you to begin with. I mean, one of the problems that we have right now is that individuals who make a donation to your organization, 40% or more of them are not going to make a second donation. And that's a big number, and that happens because, a lot of times, people give to your organization because someone asked them to, and, they give once, but they don't necessarily feel engaged to your organization. So you need to find a way to get your donors engaged in your organization. You need to engage them in what you do. And we'll talk about that a little bit more too. From a corporate perspective, as I said, corporate giving is down a bit, but you need to find ways to do things different with your corporate partners. One size does not necessarily fit all. The whole sponsorship, sponsor a golf hole or sponsor this or sponsor that isn't necessarily the best fit for corporate America anymore. I think we want to try to find ways to better partner with corporate America. Corporations, think about where they are right now. They're trying to entice people to come work for them too. They want to show that they're a good place to work. They want to show the world, especially the Gen Zs and Gen Y, that there's a level of social responsibility that exists within their organization, because that's what the consumers are demanding. That's what employees are demanding. So what you want to try to do is you want to try to offer more opportunities for corporations to showcase that they are good corporate citizens, so that if they're going to give you money, that you can help and make it a two-way street through pushing the fact that they're doing well, doing good for you, giving them opportunities to volunteer. I mean, everybody's working remotely. Everybody's looking for ways to bring their staff together. Everybody's looking for ways to create corporate culture. Some of that you guys can be the ones who kind of step in and allow for some level of volunteering to take place, where corporations can send a group of their staff to provide a, let's say, your Habitat for Humanity, to do a home build, or to clean up a park, or whatever it is that your organization does. Crowdfunding campaigns are on the rise. They do provide an opportunity to attract new donors and tell your story. Donors tend to be more diverse. They tend to be younger. They tend to be single. So crowdfunding is something that we're seeing an uptick in the nonprofit sector. I mentioned before community-centric fundraising. The focus is on an impacted community and not a specific organization. If you can bring organizations together surrounding a particular community, and you can kind of work together to treat societal issues within that community, you might be able to attract bigger grants and bigger dollars. Hybrid events are here to stay. We're seeing much more in terms of mobile and virtual auctions, live streaming of events. They're not going to be going away anytime soon. So as I said, we're kind of approaching a recession. We're not there yet, but these are tougher times, and it makes it harder to fundraise dollars. So what do organizations need to do? Well, you need to practice gratitude. Record a short video, tell your donors how their giving is making the world better. Help them to understand how the funds are being used. What impact are they having? Have the ability to have maybe some of the people you're helping provide a personal message, a personal thank you to the donor, and showing that their donation has made a difference in the lives of one of the people that you work with. You need to stay connected. And when I say stay connected, I don't mean stay annoying. You don't need to be overwhelming their inboxes with emails and stuff. It should be a thoughtful process, but you need to stay connected to your donors. We've seen too often where we've made donations to nonprofit organizations. We get the standard thank you letter and we never hear from them again. Donors want to feel like they're important. Donors want to feel like they're making a difference. Donors want to understand the leverage and impact that they're having, and you need to kind of push that out there. Look into matching gifts. Anytime someone's making a donation, find out if the company they work for has a matching gift program and see what you can do there. Find corporations that do have a matching gift program and see if you can work with them in terms of tapping into a program or developing a program specifically for them that provides them with benefit. You need to have more targeted campaigns. There's statistics out there that says that a more targeted campaign towards a donor where you're kind of focusing on what the donor is most interested in about your organization is going to have a significantly better result in terms of raising money. So you want to make sure that whatever you're doing is much more targeted. And you want to leverage people. I mean, people give to people. So if you can leverage people, you're going to be in a much better position. Stay fresh, reevaluate how you're fundraising, what's effective. Pivot away from some of the outdated things that you're doing, kind of understand the return on investment that you're having. Fundraising events tend to be a little more expensive. See if there are other things that you can do that, maybe are going to drive better results. Set realistic fundraising budgets. We see all the time that, organizations use fundraising as a way of balancing their budget, but the numbers that they're putting in there are not necessarily realistic. So, make sure that you're doing that effectively. Avoid emergency solicitations. Make sure you have a rainy day fund. Nobody wants to hear we're doing really poorly and we need your money now. Donors want to know that, they're involved with winners. They're involved with organizations that are effective. And get social, turn to social media, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. I know I only have about 10 minutes left and I've got a lot to go through, so I'm going to move a little bit faster, but understand that even if I don't get through all the material here, everybody has the slides. So social media continues to be on the rise. 15.6% of people say that social media influences how they donate. So it's very, very important for you to ensure that you're tapping into the social media outlets. So top benefits of social media: you can build relationship with your target audience. You can simplify your fundraising, reaching through comments, likes, shares at no cost. Personalized content growing your network, sharing your impact, showing your impact. So it's a great way to build awareness, to generate a large level of leverage through reposting, getting people to repost your posts. Great opportunity to utilize volunteers, as I mentioned before. It's a great way to promote your partners, promote your donors and everything else. Go out there, show people how you're helping people. Try to use videos. Short videos are great because you can actually see the content pretty quickly in terms of what's happening and how you're making a difference. Share news and updates, make supporters feel valuable. Say thank you to your donors and supporters through social media. Promote events, introduce your team, show people what's happening behind the scenes so that they feel like they're part of the organization. They feel like they're connected to the organization. There's a reason why on a lot of these reality TV shows, they introduce you and give you back stories of the people that are contestants or the individuals who are on the show. They do it so that you get connected and you're invested. So the more that you can get people connected and invested, the more they're going to be willing to donate. In terms of growing your social media, show the love. Share content from other nonprofits. Tag other nonprofits, tag your sponsors, tag everybody. That's going to help with all of that. Put social media icons on your email so people know how to get in touch with you and how to find you. You can run a contest. You can give away tickets to a fundraising event, give away t-shirts, give away whatever if people start to follow you, so you can build your following. As I mentioned before, quality is much more important than quantity. It's not about posting 100 times. It's about posting the right information, sharing the right stories, sharing the right information so that you provide meaningful information that speaks to your audience. Post videos, Facebook, Instagram prioritize this content in their newsfeed. So the more that you can post short videos, the better off you're going to be. And then also take a look at who's following you within social media, because you may have some influencers in your social media followers that you can maybe reach out to and get them to leverage and do a campaign for you. I happen to go on one of the nonprofit organizations that I follow, and I happen to take a quick glance through who was following them, and I saw that one of the people that was following them had about 50,000 followers. That's a great person for them to be reaching out to and talking to and seeing if they could leverage the followers that they have to help the organization. TikTok is another avenue where you can use short videos to kind of make a difference. The number of people on TikTok is growing tremendously. There are approximately 80 million monthly active users in the US. In order to, though, kind of leverage it, you need to commit. You need to have a staff member or a volunteer out there making videos on a regular basis. You need to approach TikTok like a human, not a brand. Share your story. Be genuine in what you're doing. Showcase the people, showcase the programs, and everything else. So we've given you a couple little tips here and a couple little places and links that you can go to get some more information about how you can do things with TikTok a little more effectively. From a labor perspective, company loyalty continues to recede. People aren't staying with companies anymore. Things like salary, flexibility, work-life balance, those are things that are going to attract people. People tend to stay, especially in the world we're in now, where people are working more hybrid and people are working more in groups. People tend to stay more connected with the teams that they're involved in and more connected with their leaders, which really means that, from a organizational perspective, leadership training is going to be very, very important to get your leaders to be more empathetic, to get your leaders to provide more feedback to your staff. Your staff are craving feedback. That's what they want. They want to know how things are going. They want to learn. They want new experiences. They don't want to be doing the same stuff over and over again, which is where technology comes in to kind of eliminate some of that stuff. How do you find staff out there? Use your referral sources. Look at your other nonprofit organizations. Look at your staff. Some organizations are offering bonuses to their staff who can help them find and retain new staff members. Reach out to your volunteers, see if any of them are interested in a job. Post on nonprofit job boards such as the Nonprofit Resource Hub or AFP Long Island. Make sure you have compelling job descriptions. Talk about your passion, your excitement. Improve workplace culture. Make employees feel valued and respected. Give them a voice. Make sure you have clear communication channels. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. Make sure your compensation is competitive. Make sure you're building flexibility. If you can't be as competitive, then look for the things that staff need. Staff need daycare. If you have the ability to put to provide daycare to your staff within your facility, that could be a big plus. Look at after school help, look at transportation support, look at mental health services. Any of these things that you can do to kind of differentiate yourself is going to be important. Invest in people, mentor and cultivate talent. Look at your, as I mentioned before, leadership training. Put efforts towards increasing diversity, inclusivity, and equity. That's going to be very, very important. You want to kind of mirror the people that you're working with. You want to mirror the population and communities you serve. And again, where possible, try to find ways to increase benefits. Mental health has become a very, very big issue. And part of what organizations need to do is they need to continue to find ways to support their staff and their mental health. Since the pandemic, people have been facing a lot of different mental health issues. You want to encourage employees to take breaks, get outside, go for a walk. Be cognizant of what's happening. I mean, if you're someone maybe in a leadership position and you typically work nights and weekends, be careful about how you communicate with your staff, because if you're communicating with your staff in nights and weekends, and the world moves at a much faster pace, and everybody, they see emails and stuff, they want to respond quickly. Make sure that you're using wording that says, you don't have to get back in touch with me until Monday or tomorrow, or design the email so that they don't go out until the morning or whatever, so that people don't feel like they're they have to be connected all the time. You want to make sure that people have the ability to disconnect. I have a bunch of other slides here, a little bit more on labor, a little bit more on technology. Basically running out of time. I am available. I will be sticking around, so if anybody has any questions. I do want to just kind of give you a heads up on what the rest of the day is going to look like. Coming up now, we're going to have an IT cybersecurity panel, which has been an extremely large issue out there in the marketplace, and it's something that everybody should be learning more about. We have a legal update. We have some fundraising updates going on. We have our nonprofit accounting update, which talks about some of the new accounting principles that are coming out. We're going to be talking about strategic planning. And then around 12:20, we're going to bring together a really, really great nonprofit panel to answer a bunch of your questions. We'll have a quick wrap up, and then we'll be available for some more networking after the fact. So I appreciate everybody coming, and I hope you enjoy the day. And I'll see you a little bit later as part of the nonprofit panel. So take care, everyone.